Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Phatphil, and today we're going to be doing a video where I kind of talk about the teams that I see the most value in. These are all going to be non-galactic legend teams. Some of these will have Omicrons, some of these will not. The overarching concept here is almost calling these core teams, but not quite. I think core teams is this buzzword that AP Gaines invented way back in the day, and it was the 8 teams that the core of your roster was built upon. And while some of those will be in this video and there's a lot of good stuff there, I feel like core teams kind of got twisted or, maybe for lack of a better term, perverted into these things that got put onto a pedestal that maybe they necessarily should not have been. And I also think that content was designed long before some of these very accessible galactic legends were available. When Grand Arena was he designed it to be amazing in Grand Arena, but it was before some of these other game modes gained a lot of importance. So I think calling things core teams now is not an accurate statement, and I feel like it makes them seem better. So these are just teams that I've gotten the most value out of. It's a long way to say that. Let's give a huge shout out to our channel members, though. Before we get into our video, as always, these players deserve so much credit for just, honestly, even just keeping me sane at times. It's kind of like Abraham Lincoln. He used to, for my American friends, he used to carry on little newspaper clippings of when the papers were positive of him. And that's what you guys do for me a lot, is just keep that positivity going. And I really appreciate it. So thank you guys again. Let's get in here. Let's talk about the teams that Phatphil has gotten the most value out of over his years of playing SWGO. I am going to say this before we get into the full list. This is just, hey, this is what I see. This is not a comprehensive build these now. These are just the teams that I feel I've gotten the most value out of based on what I put into them, based on how I use them, and everything else. So we're going to start off with my two probably favorite teams from even years and years ago. Commander Luke Skywalker and General Skywalker. They always find a way. They're all reliable. If you're not sure if something will work, these teams normally find a way to still kind of stay right on the edge of that. I'm using you in GAC, or you are my best sixth man. You're the one I'm coming off the bench to clean up. Datacrons are normally pretty kind to these teams because there's a lot of different mechanics that go into them. Obviously, the 15 and 15 right now is really good for both of them. But even some of these Datacrons, whether it's Armor Pen, offense, the Commander Luke Skywalker team with potency or tenacity, the General Skywalker team, there's a lot of different stats that can really make a difference for this team. They're one of these things where even some of the Datacrons where they give the enemy team buffs, well, that's good for General Skywalker. So, are they the best at banners? No. Do they counter GLs? Not really anymore. Are they still an important part of my Grand Arena offense or defense? Yes. That I will go after and fight certain teams knowing I've got these in my back pocket. So I think for what I've put into them and what I've gotten out of them, I love these friggin' teams. I will, very biased there, but I think these are still two of the best teams in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. Again, particularly for what you put into them and what you get out of them. And with these clones, Fives and Rex are really good pilots. General Skywalker, Fives is the only one of these characters that isn't a Galactic Legend Wreck. All these guys are Galactic Legend Wrecks. So again, it's one of those things where it's for the value you put in, you get a lot out. Now, the Darth Traya team and the Darth Malgus team. Again, I think these were both still, at least, maybe not Malgus himself, but Darth Revan was part of the AP Gaines core guide thing. I think the 4 teams I've mentioned so far are. However, for me, this more so goes into how they get used. The Traya team, this is a very solid team, not just for later on, you're using them a lot in GAC, not so much in your territory wars or territory battles, but this is a great team for Conquest. I think a lot of people underestimate how powerful this team can be for Conquest, particularly when you look at the 9 characters I've listed here that are Sith. There's sometimes those feats where you have to win without any attackers in your team. Well, Traya, Nihilus, and Scion, none of them are attackers. So the Sith trio themselves do not have the attacker tag. And then whether it's Darth Malgus, Malak, or Bastila Shan Fallen all do not have that attacker tag. So by kind of combining these two teams together in Conquest, you can get that, hey, no attackers. And it's a, solid team. Like, they do work. And then, of course, in Grand Arena, it's worth mentioning, too, I should say, that Darth Revan, Malak, and Bastila, even before you get Darth Malgus, that is a very, very good team, whether it's 3v3, put 5v5, add in some Sith Empire. Those teams slap. It is crazy how good that team can be. You add in Malgus, they get even better. But these are kind of these teams that in Grand Arena, they exist. Like, the Traya team now exists in this very kind of narrow band where she still is super helpful in Kyber 1. And then below that, I mean, the options are endless. But the Malgus team, that is a team that, hey, defensively, I'm going to force you to do X, Y, Z. But offensively, what you're able to do with that, where you can split off Malak from this team and sometimes solo something, or able to go kill a really, really powerful team without having to overextend yourself, it feels really good. So those are two teams that, for the investment I've put into them, what I've got now is just, it's really good. And again, I don't need to get into all the teams that they beat. We're more just talking about from a like mechanics perspective and the way that you can utilize these characters in territory battles with various strategies and stuff. Yeah, like like this team here, don't sleep on the ability that it has to just kind of tank hits, particularly if there's some sort of debuff heavy team. Darth Nihilus, remember, every time that when an allied Scion or Traya are inflicted with a debuff, he gains turn meter and 30% max health. Do not sleep on how much max health this guy can ramp over the course of a territory battle, and it does stack over waves. So if you can get into phase two, obviously because TB now it's like 2 phases. If you can get into that second phase where he's gained a ton of max health, it's almost impossible for them to kill him. And then again, when he annihilates somebody, he's going to take even more. And then Malak, the usefulness in territory battle that he has, think about how much health those characters have, and his drain life will take away 100% of their max health. Yeah, you'll love to see it. Reva and Bo-Katan Mandalore. These are the light side and dark side kind of Swiss Army knives. No, Swiss Army knives. It's not knives. Get your grammar right, Phil. I'm going to get yelled at by somebody in the comments for that. Whether you're going up against a team, you're like, can this work? It's, hey, normally, yeah, Inquisitors will work, or hey, Bo-Katan Mandalore will work. But they fill so many of those gaps. Like, when I got these teams, the doors that opened up in terms of how I could play offense, how I could go about my defense, completely changed overnight. With Inquisitors, it's this comfort of knowing, like in territory battles, that phases 1, 2, and 3, whether it's the mixed planets or the dark side planets, I can get combat missions done. And then, of course, there's the Reva mission in and of itself, which is, good. But they can beat a lot of those missions. So not only are you investing in a team that is, hey, I'm going to be able to earn Reva shards, but you're going to be able to use them to get to that planet. And the value there that's incredible value. That you're not, like, a lot of times it was, okay, I'm building this team, but what else can it do? That team gets you waves. And then for the Bo-Katan Mandalore team, what I would say, in TB, not quite as strong as the Inquisitors. However, where I would say this team shines is its ability to clean up and kill certain galactic legends that the Inquisitors struggle a little bit more with. Bo-Katan just really, really impressed with what she can do, and even how, right? That how is even crazier at times. 3v3 this past GAC, I used Bo, Paz, and IG-12 and Grogu to be a Jedi Master Kenobi team, and that was huge, right? That's game-changing. So, yeah, absolutely think these two teams kind of a Swiss Army knife, however you want to use them. Even, like, throwing this team on defense, there are some things that will beat it that you're like, I don't like that. But if it's a surprise to your opponent and they're not expecting it, don't sleep on it, because they will punish you one way or the other. Like, it's not fun. Listen, the Bounty Hunters, this is one of the best teams that has just every time I'm like, what should I do here? Oh yeah, you know what? Bosk will work. Like, I'll just use Bosk, Mando, Grief, maybe throw Fennec or Boba Fett in there. For a long time, this was the Lord Vader counter. You'd throw Beskar Mando in here, you had your Lord Vader counter. But even just thinking about some of those other pesky teams, having that Annihilate from Mando is huge. And again, with Fennec, the damage output she has, Boba Fett has an AoE, there's some ignore taunt stuff here. Highly recommend using this team, especially as you, get to some of those GACs where you're kind of up against a wall. You will be surprised at what this team can beat at certain times. One of the things that I used this team extensively for was countering the Rogue One Admiral Raddus. That if you could kind of, now it took a little bit of luck at times, but if you could avoid getting that all important ability block to not land on Grief Karga, they will just snipe out Adrad and you're good to go. Just a great team all the way around. Something that I think, again, in Kyber 1 and 2, you do have to be a little bit more careful with them because teams will be faster or crafted to still beat them. But for what I've put into them and what I've gotten out, it's crazy. And when I talk about, put in, I want to make sure we understand this. That's not just the relic levels, that's the mods, right? That these teams, for what I've put into them and what I've put out of them, I've gotten a lot out. That I've gotten more than I've put into them. Where some other teams, I've put a lot into them, and what I've gotten out, yeah, it's good, but it took a while to get there. And again, for territory battles, I mean, Bosk, Fennec, and Boba, they're great for the Fennec mission on Tatooine because of Bosk's leadership and those damage over times on the other team. You throw Mando and Grief in there, and I guarantee you could probably auto it. But just something where there's some utility here at times. And then in Conquest, of course, I mean, just load them up with the right data discs and they're never losing. Dark Trooper Moff Gideon. For a while, I wasn't sure how to quite use this guy except throw him on defense. Dude, his DMs are open. This dude has beer goggles on. As long as you ain't Dark Trooper, he loves you. It's, for Imperial Remnants, the ability for him to kind of take any one of these characters, put them into his team, and still operate at, peak levels is unmatched, right? It is unmatched. Whether you want to take out one of these guys to throw in the troopers here, whether you're just going to throw in Death Trooper up here, Stormtrooper, whoever you've got. The DMs are open. He's got them goggles on. You ain't Dark Trooper? Yep, good to go, right? This, for 3v3, as an offensive weapon, I've been using Dark Trooper Moff Gideon to beat, Qui-Gon Jinn. Which is just, one of those annoying teams, but I'm getting max banners. And that's a team I see a lot of players drop on, and you could say, oh, well, that's expensive, using a Conquest unit, yada, yada, yada. Again, I feel like Qui-Gon Jinn is one of those teams that I see people using GL. I've used GLs against. I'll use something way overkill, or I'll drop a battle. To be able to just use a team like this here, thumbs up, love to see it. And the big reason why this works so well is because there's this mechanic of demoralized, which again, less offense, critical chance, and critical damage. So Jedi Knight Anakin, he might be able to delete out Scout Trooper and Moff Gideon, but he ain't deleting out Dark Trooper Moff Gideon, who can revive all defeated Imperial Remnant allies with 100% health and protection. Just love to see it. So yeah. And honestly, I take out Moff Gideon, I throw in Night Trooper, Death Trooper, Peridia. This is great for combat missions on Dathomir. I've used them in Phase 1 of TB. Yeah, really, really good. And again, you could say, oh, well, they're Conquest, and they're new. This is not a list of build this early. This is a list of this is what I've gotten use out of and how, for what I've put into them and what I've gotten out of them, I feel like it's adequate. And yeah, big time. All right, fine. I'm going to stop with the high-level stuff because everybody's going to get pissed off at me. But listen, I don't know how I ever lived without Queen Amidala, Padawan Obi-Wan, and Master Qui-Gon. What they can do by adding in just a few other characters to their team. I mean, I throw Snips and Commander Tano in here, who Commander Tano does not like. Queen Amidala does not like Commander Tano. They still do well in the Ring of Kafrene. For what I can pull off with this team on earlier battles, whether it's, Kessel or Lethal, But even like forget the raid or GACs, but like even just being a solid team for territory wars, and in conquest, oh my gosh, conquest. I mean, just press the auto button. Even voluntary vanguard on Queen Amidala, they're still not able to kill this team. Yeah, I truthfully don't know how I lived without them because they're that good. And then Bane. I mean, look, this is the single best non-galactic legend character in the game. Him plus somebody else owning things. The other thing that I feel people sleep on with Darth Bane, the other aspect to his kit that I feel oftentimes just kind of gets a little bit overlooked, is that in certain territory battles, particularly like Phase 2 on Geonosis, you can use his leadership. Right? Like, you can use his leadership on Day 2 of Geonosis and easily clear one of those battles with just random Sith. Where I think Darth Bane can do really good things sometimes too is just go into a team and he has utility. You can just use him as a regular Sith. Hey, deal damage based on his max health, increase cooldowns by 1. Okay. And he's going to siphon away their max health. Like, that's not dependent on his Omicrons or anything like that, or having 2 characters. Like, that's just his kit right here. Like the rule of 2, whenever he's dazed, he gains 10% max health. Whenever an enemy starts their turn, he gains 5 speed until the end of battle. He's got critical chance, critical damage, and health steal there. Obviously, these things, it's not going to work, right? Because that's at the start of battle, there's only one other non-summon. But he still has a lot of really good utility of dispelling buffs. Again, his ability to still do well, even outside of just a duo, particularly in a game mode like TB or in a conquest where you need a full team. Yeah, Bane is that guy. Bane is him. So guys, that's just my list of like, hey, these are the teams I've gotten the most value out of. That doesn't mean that there aren't other teams that are really good. But for the investment that I feel I've put into these characters and what I'm getting out in all of those game modes that I mentioned is just, it's immense. Some of these other teams, they're really good in one game mode and lacking in another, or they're overly dependent on stealing characters from other teams. There's some really good teams that I was not able to cover today, but I think these are the ones that I've looked at and said, hey, if I had to draw a line, where does it stop? It's these teams for me. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, and maybe I'm a little biased including CLS and Gas here, but I think again, when you look at overall investment there, and when you say overall, you're going to be like, well, Phil, Gas is super expensive. What are you talking about? Take a look at his requirements again. Look at your Galactic Legend requirements. There's not that much extra you're throwing in there anymore. I get that maybe early on in the game it seems like a lot, but later in the game, man, I'd kill for his requirements. So, anyway, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.